after which he will take questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Let me thank the media for coming. I hope that you would help me to put to the Guyanese public the current precarious situation that has been created with the supply of electricity. The allocations for GPL, which have been cut, those allocations do two things. They replace the suppression in the tariffs. The prices charged by GPL are suppressed prices. Every kilowatt hour of electricity that we sell at these suppressed prices are short of by about $12 to $14 of what is required. And so the allocations replace that. And secondly, the government as owner of GPL is called upon or is required as any owner to make provisions for the of GPL. So these allocations provide these two requirements of GPL. I need to say too that our prices and costs are not exorbitant. They compare very well with prices and costs of similar utilities in the Caribbean. All of us utilizing petroleum fuels, diesel and heavy fuel oil as the basis, as our primary energy source. And our costs and the prices we charge are well within the lower half of what prevails. So the feeling that our prices are exorbitant that is not true. I know that from time to time people tell me that okay, our prices are not more than Jamaica or Barbados, but they're getting paid more money than us. I admit that the rates of pay there are generally higher than in Guyana. But what I would maintain is that when we go to buy fuel and insulators and conductors and transformers, things which constitute about 90% or more of the costs of running a utility, we pay the same prices, and in many cases we may actually be paying a bit more because of our smaller volumes. I would like to support this by going through some tables which I did present in Parliament during the budget, but I would like to go through them. I'm sorry that maybe we don't have the opportunity to present them on the television to the public out there, but let me go to this table, this graph, which shows in June 2011 from CARILEC, the Caribbean Association of Electrical Utilities. This graph here will show the prices for domestic, the prices for domestic electricity. And as we look at it, the lowest is Suriname at 4.6 cents. Let us double it up and let us say that is, I think, $9 a kilowatt hour. Trinidad and Tobago at about $12 a kilowatt hour. Bahamas at 30. And then there's Guyana at an average of about $53. And then there's St. Lucia and Guadeloupe. So in this, we're number 4 from the bottom. I think there's 16 altogether. And up at this upper end, we see Bermuda at something like $120 a kilowatt hour. We see Cayman and Turks and Caicos at about $95 a kilowatt hour. And we see St. Martin's, Grenada, and Barbados, Antigua at figures like $75 to $80 a kilowatt hour.
Local currency.
Yes, Guyana dollars. It's in US cents, but I've been translating it to US dollars. So those are the prevailing prices. We may think that this very high price at Bermuda it's out there, and maybe it has in it a VAT price or some environmental tax price or something, or some kind of service price in it. So that one is excessive. But then these others here at about $80 a kilowatt hour, I would say that is about the prevailing level. Let us say that is the costs, the cost price. Our costs are actually about there, but our prices that we're charging are way down at 53 on this chart versus maybe 80, 53, 54 versus 80. We're subsidizing. There's a subsidy of about $16 a kilowatt hour on each kilowatt hour of electricity that we sell. And in this table, we have listed for the years from 2003 to 2013, which is a projection, we've listed the average of the actual rate we charge and the economic rate based on standard calculations in the final return certificate for the price based on a return of equity. And from that, we have calculated for each year how much revenue was foregone by GPL. And in the years 2003 on to 2007, here we see 678 million, 1.7 billion, 1.3 billion, 1.5 billion, 1 billion that were foregone. And then in the next 2 years, we're seeing that it's going up to 4-point-something billion dollars. And then at the end here, towards the end, we're about 8.0. And this year, we're forecasting that we're foregoing, GPL is foregoing about $6.4 billion, monies which should have flown to GPL from the tariffs, $6.4 billion. In this table, too, what has been done is that we have been following a policy, and the governments before have been following the policy of subsidizing electricity to some extent. And we also use that policy to do some averaging and some standardizing as best we could. So if you recall oil prices went up rapidly. I think it's about 2008, and then and 2009, and then in 2010 and 11, they were falling, or they were lower than they had been, so that the prices that would have been required would have dropped. But we actually took back, which the arrangements allow, we took back some of what was foregone in earlier years, and so we held a price in 2010 and 2011. We held the price unchanged, but it was higher than cost. Let us say it was higher than what GPL should have had then. It was higher by some small amount. But the total, the net effect from 2003 to 2013 is that GPL has foregone some 27.8 billion Guyana dollars in revenue, in prices. By keeping the prices lower, the GPL has foregone some $27.8 billion. And as I say again, these are prices that compare well with prices in other Caribbean areas. They're not excessive prices. These prices compare well with others. That's for the media. That's for the media. So that's a very important point I want to make. We have some other graphs. I have got copies of it to give to the media. I'm afraid I did not make the arrangements to have them available in a form to project on the screen, and that's something I wish I had arranged for. The next large area for government's allocation, or the next area that the government allocation from the budget meets, is the need for investments, either investments to improve the operation, both equity type and to some extent loans type. GPL arranges some loans, some amount of loans on its own, but not having a positive profit flow and so on, banks and institutions are constrained the amount of loans that they're willing to provide directly to GPL. So the loans come through the government. And in the last period, in the very recent period, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, we could speak to what has been done in GPL in the form of investments. Let me say that the peak demand for GPL, our demand for electricity has been growing in line with the growth of our economy, and also in line with people's rising standard of living, installing air conditioning. That's a particularly large draw on power. But the demand has risen from about 33 megawatts in 1992 to 87 megawatts about now in the Demerara system. And so one has to put in the investments, both generation and network investments, to deliver 87 megawatts, let us say, instead of 33 megawatts some time ago. So these investments over the last about 5 years include the transmission upgrade, inclusive of 7 new substations and 3 expanded ones, and a submarine cable across the Demerara River. This is being funding, the financing for that is coming through a loan from China, and the total project is about 8.4 billion Guyana dollars. The 7 new substations, the underwater cable, the submarine cable across the Demerara River. There is also, beginning now, the construction of a new 26 megawatt generating station at Versailles to be completed by year end, and that's about $6.4 billion. There is something that is being completed now. Ever since the 1970s, a decision was taken by the government of the day, which was a reasonable decision, that Guyana will go to 60 cycles. And you may recall, some of you may be too young to know, that electricity established in Georgetown in the times of our being a British colony, the standard was 50 cycles. But being part of the Americas, where the standard is 60, a decision was taken, a reasonable one, in the 1970s to convert Guyana to 60 cycle. And we are now in the last stages in the Georgetown area. So this final conversion in Demerara includes converting 22 megawatts of generation and also some of the networks, and that is about $2.4 billion. That is ongoing at this moment, and that is a source of some of the extra outages at this time. In fact, this is an ongoing program over the first 6 months of the year, and it will occasion some outages to make that conversion. There's the installation of 36 megawatt of new generation, which we did over 2009 to 2011. That was about Guyana, $10 billion. And there's a program coming through the IDB of strengthening networks so as to counter electricity theft and doing some other upgrades, and that's about $1 billion. And so if you add these up, you could see that over the last 5 years, government has had to put about $28.2 billion of investments into GPL, and you could add that to the foregone revenues, the net foregone revenues of about $27 billion. There is a total of about 55 or more billion dollars that government has put and has had to put into GPL. So if we think of this year in particular, there's the foregone revenue at this time, at least this is what we projected, keeping electricity rates basically unchanged since 2007, 2008 at $62.80, when we would require this year a price more like $75.72 on the average. Doing that, we are foregoing, GPL is foregoing in revenues this year some $6.4 billion. And we have a number of investments happening now. The new generating station of about $6.4 billion, the completion of strengthening the networks and trying to fight electricity theft of $1 billion, and some of the other things here. So you could say that there is investments now of about in the order of $7-8 billion that the government is doing into GPL, plus we're foregoing another $6 billion. So there is a $14 billion hole to fill, and that hole could only be filled from the budget. If that hole is not to be filled by raising tariffs, if the investment side is not to be met by calling on Guyanese or foreigners to buy shares in GPL, or if it is not to be met by not doing it and therefore not being able to meet people's expectations in quantity and quality, then what are we to do? What are we to do? How is it to be met? So that is on GPL as a company, an operating and a running ongoing company. There was also, I will speak to the second part because there was a piece in here for Amaila. There is this strong feeling that, or wish and desire, that we should be able to find some really lower cost source of electricity. And we feel that way too. And there's the option, we've heard that hydroelectricity is often quite cheap. The truth is it's very costly at the beginning, but it's cheaper afterwards. And we in Guyana have been looking to hydropower development all along. The difficulty has been that our potential sites are 200 miles away generally in the Pacaraimas, and transmission is an issue, and the cost of transmission. We have been working to put together this Amaila project. The Amaila project holds is projected to provide us electricity in Georgetown at about 12 cents US a kilowatt hour. That's $24, $25 Guyana a kilowatt hour. Currently, our average cost of generation is between about 22 cents maybe for HFO and maybe 30 plus 34 cents for diesel when you use diesel. We use mostly HFO, so maybe we're averaging 25, 26 US cents a kilowatt hour, 50 to $50 a kilowatt hour just for generation at the moment. So we're looking, Amila will reduce this by about a half. So we need to get Amila going. We need to get Amila going, and there is the need to get on with the road. And as you would have heard, or I'd say again, that government is putting in some $80 million, is committed to put in some $80 million in equity to make up the whole figure of some $840 million at the latest estimate to get Amila going. We're committed to put in some $80 million US dollars from the GRIF fund. And government has taken a position that we put that equity in, and we will forego, at least for the first period, any returns of that equity so as to keep costs, keep the prices, so as to keep the prices low. And in addition to that, it shows good faith. It shows good faith, and it encourages the other people who are putting together that sum. I must say that I was quite pleased to see in that article, I think it was in Stabroek News 2 or 3 days ago, I think it might have been carried in Kaichor News 2, I think the author was a Gopal, which answered this question about the cost of Amila and the general cost of hydropower projects, and he showed that there's quite a wide range because it is very sensitive to the geographical situation, and also there is the issue of the transmission line in our case. And he showed that our price of 6.5 is not uncommon at these times. The kind of cost, the unit cost, is not uncommon for this time. The more economic hydropower sites around the world have largely been utilized, have largely been developed, and now the sites that are being developed now are more costly than those ones that were developed before. That's only sensible. People take the easiest one, do the easiest ones first. And so our site is not excessive in terms of what's happening in the world at this time, the cost of developing Amila. And at the same time, Amila will give us on the average a generation cost that is 50% of our present generation cost utilizing fuel. So I'm particularly perturbed and perplexed at the action of the opposition parties in cutting the allocations to GPL, and perplexed about what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? What is to be done at this time? So that's my opening.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. First, the Prime Minister will take questions on his opening statement and matters relating to GPL and maybe Amila. There is a mic there that you'll use. Just say your name and the media house you're representing.
Mr. Prime Minister Adam Harris, Prime News. There is a view that there are other votes in GPL that could be used for some of the immediate projects, and that these cuts are actually asking GPL to really prioritize its programs. How would you respond to such a suggestion?
I could tell you, sir, that GPL's list of things that they really need to do is not totally funded. Even with the allocations that we have put, there is an additional $4.7 billion that would be needed. And let me stress again, I think maybe the quantity of money puts people off. But as I showed there, from 2003, GPL has had a suppression of the budget of the prices. We've suppressed prices by a net $27.8 billion. And over the last 3 years, we've put in, government has allocated in another 20-something billion dollars as in investments and loans to which an owner needs to put into a company like GPL to keep upgrading it to meet the rising demand. That's $56 billion into GPL. The significant quantities of money there. There are not other monies in GPL. And if anything, there is a shortage, now GPL is going to forego, it's still for, even if these allocations were met, GPL is foregoing some $4.7 billion of other things that they should be doing. And these are some of the reasons why people want meters. Now, if I want to have my house wired right away, now at times GPL may not have meter, they may not have particular lengths of cables because stores are suppressed, suppliers are what you owe to suppliers, I forget the term now, is running high. Working capital is tight, all those things. So I think that we have to accept, and that's why I put time to show that the prices and the costs of GPL are in the ballpark, so that people, we need to get away from this idea that GPL is how somewhere inefficient, burns money. GPL takes money and burns it up, just destroys it, wastes it. That is not so. That is not true. That is not so. That is not so. And allocations to GPL are not gifts to GPL. They are allocations to the consumers of electricity. Who is GPL? GPL is the employees, I think about 1,000 on GPL's list, and maybe 200 200 people who work with contractors that do certain things for GPL, and the other party in GPL may be the owner, which happens to be the state. Who is GPL? Who is GPL? If you're going to beat GPL, who is the GPL you're going to beat? It's going to be the employees, the owners, which is the state, and then there's, of course, the customers of GPL. I think we need to change our thinking about GPL and our approach to GPL.
Earl, Stabrook News. Prime Minister, I'd like to ask, the budget had provided for, in terms of the subsidies to GPL, about $11 billion or thereabouts. About half of that dedicated towards capital investment, and the other half dedicated towards going towards subsidies, as I understand it. So with this cut of about $5 billion, which one of those would be directly impacted? I
wanted to use this opportunity, and that's why I explained the situation to you and to the public, to say now there's less money for, how is this shortfall is to be met? It could be met in various ways, by providing less. It could be met by us agreeing now to pay more, pay what we should pay, to remove the subsidy. It could be met by that. It could be met also by us selling shares. And I tell you, one of the things once you sell shares is that you have to charge the correct price. There's no question of subsidy. You're not going to invest your money in a company where the price is being subsidized and you're only seeing losses. So once we get to selling shares, we're going to have to once we get to selling shares, to raise the investment part, they will have to be, prices will have to be the economic prices. I want you to help me. I seek your help in suggesting how we should approach it now.
PM, another issue that plagues GPL would be the issue of losses. And what, if you can tell me, what efforts are being made, or how have those efforts between, let's say, the last 5 years, let's say from 2007, 2008, when you had the last increase of,
Tariffs.
tariffs, how have those efforts since then resulted in losses coming down, and to what percentage? And how ideal is that? What's
Well,
the
I tell you, frankly, this is a place of great embarrassment for me. Not because of GPL per se, but embarrassment for us all together, us Guyana, as a culture. We are known in these worlds as a high electricity theft area. We're known, that's what we're known as. It's embarrassing. Our losses have stalled at about 31%. Let me answer first. One of the items cut there is the program to make the networks more robust so that electricity stealing becomes more difficult. Currently, typically, we have two wires going out at, I don't know what, 120 volts or something, and people go and hook onto it, or they hook on at their meter, they do various things. One thing we're doing now, you can buy cable, which is much more expensive, where these two separate wires are now wrapped around with insulation. So if you want to get to them now, you got to go in there, and when you get in there, you'd more than likely bridge the two and cause a big boom. And shut down people, shut down the neighbors too, but cause a big boom or something. There are things we do. There are things that we've been working at it. We've been trying moral suasion. We will continue moral suasion. We put into place stiffer laws so that now people who are convicted on a third occasion for stealing electricity by any means would have mandatory prison sentences. We don't like sending people to prison. I don't like sending my Guyanese to prison. I prefer all my Guyanese are behaving well, good citizens, so the question doesn't arise. That's what I prefer. But if they're going to steal electricity, I support them, sending them to prison. So, and then the other thing that we're doing now, the third thing in this working with the IDB is to take the investment approach to try to harden the circuit so as to make it difficult. Harden the circuits, doing things at the metering level. So, for example, now you can have a transformer and a meter in the transformer saying how much power is coming to the transformer, and then you get you supply maybe a dozen or 22 dozen people from the transformer, and you have a meter on each, and you got then circuitry that computer circuitry that adds up what people are receiving and what is coming to the consumer, coming to the transformer, and so if at any time there is a drop, there's a drop in it, it's out of spec, then the whole transformer is cut off and everybody is cut off. If they're stealing, there are things like that, but they don't come cheaply. When you start to do those sorts of things, you raise the cost of hooking up, say, a home in a built-up area, a small home, let us say a typical average home in a built-up area, you raise it from about $50,000 to $60,000 to $300,000. You raise the investment in extending electrification that way. There are various levels of hardening that you could do, and we've started doing that. And that we have this $1 billion of that has been cut is to provide hardened circuits, which we have already started with GPL, has already started installing in some of the difficult areas, hardened circuits at nearly more than 5 times, 6 times the cost. That's what we're doing.
PM, how does commercial losses compare to technical losses? What's the
Okay.
ratio?
GPL at its worst, at a certain time when commercial losses was even much higher, we were up to about 44%. We worked at it, we've got it down to 31%. And that 31% now, we attribute some about 13-14% to technical losses, and we attribute some 18% or 17-18% to commercial losses. That's how we attribute it at the moment. The technical losses have to do with the networks not being sufficiently invested in, the lines being long and they're being overloaded. Indeed, we have pointed out that many times that a usual rule of thumb is to not load your conductors to load your conductors to about 40% of the limit, the heat limit on a conductor. But we have a lot of places where we're running 70, 80, 90, close to 100% on our conductors in transmission and in the distribution. So we have to basically double up transmission and double up distribution. We are aware of that. The issue is funding. It doesn't come cheaply either. It doesn't come cheaply. One of the last reviews of GPL said that we should be investing about $250 million into GPL to upgrade it all around in its facilities. You have to attract that money, and that money generally expects some return. So that initially, in the initial years or so, that would add $10-20 billion more to what you should be getting in from GPL. It adds a lot.
Adolphus, Capital News. You asked in your presentation what needs to be done. One of the concerns in justifying the opposition's cut is that GPL has been plagued with a management problem. That is, they're asking then why the taxpayers then is going to be asked to subsidize bad management in terms of better efficiency.
It is not true that GPL is plagued with a management problem. Our costs and our prices compare favorably well with other places. It is not true that GPL has a management problem. People often mix up, and I had this experience, say, in the bauxite days. Let me talk about that. We had our power station going there, and when we didn't have money, you couldn't do the scheduled 5-year maintenance, and then the year later, it blows up. And then you come and tell the manager, you run past 5 years, you should do the maintenance, you didn't do the maintenance, bad managers. but geez, there was not the money there. I don't accept the criticism that GPL has a problem of bad management. If anything at all, GPL has been trying to have a stiff management, and maybe they should have an even stiffer management. We had our man killed there when he was trying to reduce losses. A retired assistant superintendent of police is maybe 3-4 years ago. Killed when he was going after pulling down connections, illegal connections. It's not bad management. It's not bad management.
Another follow-up to that, though, the government have been receiving over the years $1 billion in environmental tax. What has been used for, or couldn't this same money be channeled to improve GPL earnings?
We can talk about the environmental tax another time. I don't think it's anyway closely linked with this issue. Maybe let us say the $1 billion tax in environment tax. Let us say it provides one of the $5 or $6 billion or more that we need to subsidize GPL because we're not charging the price we ought to. The price that we ought to is not being charged. We could take that position. That position could be taken. It's a subsidy you're receiving. If you pay the extra $1 billion in GPL, maybe then that environmental tax maybe be available,
Ramde Algina, 2 questions, Prime Minister. Last night in your defense against the cuts, you indicated that one of the issues would be that GPL would have to purchase less fuel. bottom line question. Would this mean increased tariffs? Would it mean that blackouts will continue? And secondly, the cut to the subsidy effectively cuts off the subsidy from the rest of the country, but does not affect the Linden subsidy. Is there a deliberate vindictive attack in cutting the rest of the country and leaving Linden intact?
Well, I think that these are issues that we should, that people ought to think about. Here in Georgetown, or on the coast, in the GPL area, we are effectively subsidizing every kilowatt hour by about $16 a kilowatt hour. In Linden, the subsidy, and we know the historical reasons, is more in the order of $75 a kilowatt hour. So, put that way, yes, we are cutting out $16 a kilowatt hour, but we're probably looking to maintain a subsidy of $75 a kilowatt hour in a certain location. Yes, these are things that one needs to think about. As far as what GPL should be done at this time, again, I'm asking for suggestions. I'm asking for suggestions. How should it be met? How should it be met?
Given the cut, sir, how close is the government to allowing the tariffs to go where they may?
I'm waiting for suggestions, sir. I told you I spent some time thinking out through. What are we to do in this situation? What are we to do? One way of doing is to put out less electricity. One other way to do it is to start selling shares to raise at least the investment side money that has been cut. But once we raise shares, those people expect a return, and you got to go to the economic prices too. That's the story. I really want to say to our Guyanese people that we have it in us to work our way and earn our way and pay our way. And when we look around, I think most of our other citizens are trying to do their best in the circumstances as they know, 85%. And let us not give in easy to all these things which I find more or less doesn't do well to us, doesn't serve well for us, that we have a utility that is no good, that we have this that is no good, we have the others that is no good. We are involved ourselves in all these places that people say is no good, that people tell us is no good. We are involved with some one of them that is no good. In the areas where we would recognize readily that we are not doing what is right, like stealing electricity, we should stop that. We should end those things. In those areas, we should end it.
You sound like a pastor.
But I would say that that probably is our number one issue, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but PM, the reality is with commercial losses, and GPL admitted that the paying consumers were actually footing the bill for electricity stolen. So as a company, GPL was losing nothing. They said that to me.
I think the way you put it there, again, is a way that is totally unhelpful. If you are running an electric company, okay, and you produce 100 units of electricity, and let us say you only get paid for 70. Now, the technical losses, there's no way you could provide electricity and not have losses. You're going to have some losses. Barbados may be the best. It's like 7-8%. Jamaica is maybe 20%, 18 to 20% in total. So you're going to have some losses once you're in the system. You're going to have some technical losses, small quantities. Generally, to get the lower losses, you have to put more into you have to invest more into the system. So it doesn't come for free. But so you're going to have some losses. But your company you're operating is spending these amounts of money, and for it to sustain itself, it has to get in money to cover its costs. It has to get in money to cover its costs. So it's not an issue that GPL just take a position. You who paid, you got to pay for that guy over there. It doesn't that we start out, that any company starts out from that operation. You know, it's just the way an enterprise operates. It's not a decision to inflict punishment on the people who are honest and pay their bills. And more than that, I've ensured when we made the new law, ESRA, the Electricity Sector Reform Act, that everybody in Guyana has the right to self-generate. Everybody has the right to self-generate. And it's only in a few large industrial cases that people could self-generate at a lower cost than GPL sells. Because you find that when you go to self-generate, you face the same society, you face the same issues of stealing electricity, or people don't know, people are not well trained to run your machine, and so on. You find the same things when you get down to it. So people can self-generate. You can come off GPL tomorrow and self-generate, and I will tell you that you ain't going to be cheaper. I heard a pretty big operation say that recently in discussions. In fact, the industrial people complain about the electricity. They complain about the electricity prices, yes, and when I tell them that they're free to self-generate, they say, more or less, you're telling me that, but it's going to cost me more. You could self-generate.
Any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen of the media, I want to thank you very much for coming today.